Now, voting for the top officials in the KwaZulu-Natal ANC conference is still underway, with the new leadership expected to be announced later this evening. Newzroom Afrika's Ziyanda Ngcobo is at the Olive Convention Center this afternoon. Ziyanda, thank you for joining us again. Now, any indication on when the voting process will come to an end?
Well, Katlego, there's no real way of telling when it will end. It will all depend on the elections agency. But let's go back then to the nominations process, where you'll know that most of the positions, there's not many women running for those positions. And a lot of questions have been raised as those slates have been circulating, even in the run-up to this conference, about the representation of women and the zebra approach that the ANC has taken as a policy stance, as a matter of fact, when it comes to elections. And to talk more about this is Dr. Fikile Vilakazi. In most of the slates that we saw being touted, only one woman out of 5 candidates would be proposed. What does this tell us about the readiness of ANC members to actually, push women into leadership positions, not only just because they're women, but actually because there are many qualifying women who deserve to be in leadership roles?
Ziyanda, it is shocking. It is very, very sad. I mean, if you were in this room, you could see how Umama Unomusa Ngcobo was treated when her name came up for nomination. Everybody literally looked away, everybody looked down, others were laughing, and I was looking over the table there in the leadership, eyes looking far away from space. Telling of the readiness of the African National Congress to be led by a woman. It was almost as if everybody was saying, we are not going to be led by a woman. I couldn't see even a single hand being raised there. If there were hands that were raised to support the 25%, they were invisible, probably 1, 2, or 3. So that is telling. It's telling in terms of the African National Congress as a patriarchal institution, an organization that is embedded in a firm belief that anybody that has to be a chair in this organization would have to be somebody in a male body, would have to be a man, and we are not going to be led by a woman. We can have women in other positions, but not the chair. Look at what happened. The dynamic changed immediately when Unomakuku Smelane was brought in as the secretary, right? And we know generally in terms of patriarchal institutions that women can be secretaries, women can take roles of support to men. So she will really be supporting the men in the position of power, which is a chair. So that is highly problematic, Ziyanda, for an institution that is 110 years old. And I was saying in another conversation, this is not the first time that the ANC is treating women in this way. South Africa is calling for a feminist-led government. South Africa is saying we need a woman president, not because she's a woman, but because we have 110 years of being led and subjected to patriarchal leadership in the country. Isn't it time that we need to see ourselves being led differently, being led in ways that are feminine, in ways that are taking us into a direction of healing these gender wars? And I'm not suggesting that the burden of healing gender wars in South Africa should lie with women, but the ANC at least should be able to demonstrate that kind of commitment. They speak about it. It's a symbolism, it's a tokenism of some kind, right?
And let me jump in right there, because that symbolism right then, what do we say about the ANC Women's League? There's an entire league that exists primarily then to put the agenda of women forward.
In this conference, there's more than 60% of women. It's as if there is no women's league. More than 60% of women who continue to vote men as delegates into power. The Women's League is known historically to be an organization in the ANC that has been supporting the role of men, the leadership of men since 1912, right? These are women who do not have power. It has been taken away. I'm very, very worried about the fact that the disbanding of the ANC Women's League happens during this very critical time, when the organization is preparing for the policy conference next week, when there's elections coming up in November. I don't think the Women's League will be ready to even push and support itself for positions of leadership, because it is stifled. It is not functional as an organization within the ANC. And that is something that should worry the African National Congress, but also should worry those of us in the country who are saying we need to have an integrated government that is feminist-led, at least, because we have been led through patriarchy. So that should tell you how weakened is the organization of the ANC. Some people always say that if you're a woman here in the ANC, you stand no chance. What does that say to women in the ANC? I said in another conversation, if women of South Africa want to lead, I do not believe that the ANC is that place to lead. They need to either start a thing of their own, they need to get out of the ANC, but it's not going to happen under this leadership. If Umama Umatigizela Winnie Mandela could not do it, if Umama Nkosazana Dlamini Zuma could not do it, if Umama Lindiwe Sisulu could not do it, who will do it? And there's many other names. Abuna Lady Pando's names have come up, and so on. Lindiwe Sisulu herself was saying the other day, somebody was asking her in the media, I think it was Leanne, in another media platform, saying, are you ready to lead as a women's president or to stand? She said, I've tried and I failed. It's not in my mind now. I do not know. So women in the ANC are disillusioned, not because of anything else, because the space is patriarchal. The space is so oppressive to women. Unomusa Dube, she walked in that aisle shaking. Ziyanda, she was trembling. You could hear even in her voice, even as she accepted that nomination, that she is standing in a space that she is not feeling home. She's not feeling held, politically, intellectually, spiritually, and otherwise. So it is concerning.
I just want to also talk then about the readiness of the ANC to embrace people who may not necessarily be in their ranks all the time. I mean, there's been talk about how Sandile Zungu was trying to parachute himself in this race, although the other argument is to say he's an ANC member in good standing and that anybody and everybody who feels that they can stand can put their hand up. I mean, he ultimately, I think after reading the mood in the room, declined his nomination after actually saying that he was willing to go all the way. What should we read then into his declining of this nomination?
Intimidation. That's what we should read. There's a lot of work of intimidation that has happened to intimidate Sandile. Sandile is new. Sandile, in terms of leadership, Sandile is a businessman. He's got some kind of resources, but I think he has been put into a place of disillusionment. He has been embarrassed, literally, right? That declining of the leadership should tell you that he arrived at that place of saying, I'm not going to contest anymore. I'm not even going to try to bring something new in this organization because it is stuck in that feeling of the usual. Right? We rather stick with the devil than we know than the devil that we do not know. So Sandile, my sense is that I think he declined because of intimidation. Clearly, he's young. He calls himself fresh, and he didn't stand any chance.
Should then, as the ANC speaks about unity and renewal, are you getting that sense then when you had so many candidates running, diverse candidates running, for instance, in the position of chair in particular, and yet, as you've said, it's gone back to the default kind of politics, some would say even gatekeeping. As the ANC heads to 2024, what kind of message do you think this conference has sent to the public?
It's a message that the ANC is not ready to let go of the kind of power that it has been, leading with, over the years. Like you call it a default position. They are resisting change. The African National Congress is telling us that resisting change of the leadership of young people, resisting change of freshness in the form of Usandile Zungu, resisting gender and feminist change within the organization. So we are going then to 2024 knowing that we are probably going to still sit with a default position where it is going to be probably the same people of, who have been leading all along are going to continue to lead. Very little change that's going to happen. And my reading is that I think that's going to be probably the end of the ANC because South Africans are hungry for change. So no one is going to then vote for this default position, at least not as citizens, when we go to 2024.
All right, that's Dr. Fikile Vilakazi. She is a UKZN political sciences lecturer, reflecting then on what kind of messaging this conference has sent out to the public. You know, oftentimes the debate is, what the ANC and its branches want for the organization vis-a-vis what the ANC has to present to the public, and how the public, who may not necessarily even be ANC members but prospective voters, what the perception of the organization is from outside.
All right, that's Ziyanda Ngcobo, our reporter out at the KZN ANC elective conference that is currently underway.